We deserve that. We deserve that care. We are sacred, we are valuable, and we deserve justice.
Tonight, a Winnipeg MP is calling for red dress alerts to save lives.
I take guitar strings and create these rings shapes out of them, these necklaces on the youth, and it's a really kind of interesting and beautiful connection piece between us all.
And youth from the far north get a musical experience. Hello, good evening, Tansei Anine. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. A small First Nation on Vancouver Island has revealed its discovery of more potentially unmarked graves near a former residential school. APTN's Tina House was there and has this report.
As Eagle Down is danced in, blessing the ground, the Shayshot First Nation prepares to share the heartbreaking news that more potentially unmarked graves have been discovered just steps away from here. And here in this gym, which is one of the last remaining structures from the Alberni Indian Residential School, hundreds gathered to hear about the results of an extensive search undertaken by the Nuu-chah-nulth Tribal Council to find the truth behind so many horrific stories from former students. Although official school records state that 29 kids died while attending the AIRS, elected Chief Ken Watts says the research tells a different story.
We can verify the 67 children never made it home. Some of them did when were brought, but 67 passed away as students of ours. And now we've identified 17 suspected graves.
And for many, the news was difficult to hear. These teddy bears represent the kids who died here. In 1893, the Presbyterian Church built the Alberni Girls' Home, and in 1925, the United Church took it over, establishing the Alberni Indian Residential School. Kids from all across BC were forced to come here. Over the years, many kids became ill, which led to numerous outbreaks, including influenza, the measles, and the mumps, to name a few, and many succumbed to those illnesses, but for others, they just disappeared. And behind these walls, dark and inhumane treatment took place, including physical, mental, and sexual abuse. In 1973, chiefs from across the West Coast demanded the school be shut down. Former president of the Nuu-chah-nulth Tribal Council, Cliff Atleo, was once a student here from 1954 to 1963. He says he was hit by a supervisor when he was a boy and suspects that's partly the reason why he has hearing aids on both sides now. He recalled a story about a 15-year-old classmate of his.
And then I see the supervisor punch one of our older boys, who's gone now, but for no reason, for supposedly smirking at the supervisor. He was an ex-Army guy, and I remember we used to line up in a basement before meals and stuff and call him. As soon as he got close, he punched him. Blood splattered all over the place.
In 1995, former supervisor Arthur Henry Plint was sentenced to 11 years in prison from sexual assaults on young boys in his care, the judge stating that Plint was a sexual terrorist at his sentencing. With only 10% of the ground being searched, many are saying they are bound to find more unmarked graves. Tina House, APTN National News, Port Alberni.
The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors and others who might need support. That number is 1-866-925-4419. Well, nearly 2 weeks ago, the federal government dished out a $2 million contract. It was for an international organization to provide help on unmarked graves found at residential schools. The National Center for Truth and Reconciliation is increasingly voicing its displeasure to hire the Netherlands-based organization. Fraser Needham has more.
Nearly 2 years ago, 751 possible unmarked graves were found on the Cowessess First Nation, joining scores of others found on other First Nations before and since. The National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation says it was not consulted when the government hired the International Centre for Missing Persons, or ICMP. Cynthia Wesley-Eskema is the chair of NCTR's governing circle. She calls the move a slap in the face to all the Indigenous organizations that have expertise in the area.
All it does is actually makes, I think, everybody feel like the government of Canada is just doing what it's always done and not trusting and not supporting or not thinking somehow that there's a competency level in the Indigenous community to manage this. So they brought in external forces from another country entirely that has not actually worked with our people in the past.
Last Friday, Crown Indigenous Relations posted a copy of the $2 million technical arrangement it had signed with ICMP on its website. But Wesley Eskema says this has done little to lessen NCTR's concerns.
They have not been able to give us a list of the communities that have actually agreed to this conversation that they're going to actually be touching base on. We don't have that. They haven't shared that with us. The survivors have not been accommodated on this. Why not speak to the survivor circle? Who, if anyone, knows each other better?
According to the technical arrangement, the organization will then present a final report to the government on June 15th. But instead, Wesley Eskema says what the government should really do at this point is take a step back.
I think they should put it on pause for certain. I think they should have a session immediately with the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation, with the survivor circles and people across the country that have actively been engaged in this conversation.
In an emailed statement, Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations Mark Miller's office says that a cross-country outreach and engagement campaign with Indigenous communities to identify unmarked graves on the sites of former residential schools is ongoing. And ICMP, NCTR, and the Special Interlocutor are part of this process. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
A Winnipeg New Democrat MP is calling on the federal government to set up a red dress alert to notify the public when an Indigenous woman, girl, or two-spirit person goes missing. APTN Leanne Sanders has the story.
We don't have time to wait. Every moment we wait, another woman goes missing or murdered.
Leah Gazan says there appears to be no end to the crisis affecting Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirit people, something she says the Prime Minister has called a genocide. But the NDP critic for women and gender equality says we can't wait any longer for something to be done. Gazan says response times to reports of a missing woman are far too slow, and a red dress alert, similar to an Amber Alert, would make a difference.
80% of children that are reported missing through Amber Alerts are found. We deserve that. We deserve that care. We are sacred, we are valuable, and we deserve justice.
Gazan says people continue to go missing or be murdered at an alarming rate 4 years after the final report of the National Inquiry. MMIWG2S advocate Sandra Delarond says people might finally recognize the depth of the crisis once alerts start going out.
In 1 week, at the end of January, we had 10 Indigenous women go missing. And it's like 2 a day. And it's very hard for families and for advocates to see that and to feel alone. Will it change the circumstances? It might. If we start looking more at safety measures and prevention, maybe the number of alerts will go down. That's our hope.
Gazan is asking the federal government provide funding to establish a red dress alert program. She says the feds announced $724.1 million for gender-based violence issues in 2020, and only 5% of that has been spent. The Office of the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations said in an email statement that there is more to do. Addressing the calls for justice is not a linear process. Ending the crisis and getting to the root cause to ensure safety for generations to come requires ongoing work and commitment. Gazan says a red dress alert would be a tangible step for the federal government to take to end the ongoing genocide. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The federal government will be shutting down over a dozen fish farms off the coast of British Columbia in an effort to protect the wild salmon population.
This decision today is one that is not only going to benefit First Nations and British Columbians. This is a huge benefit to the environment of British Columbia.
The licenses for 15 salmon farms will not be renewed. This comes as welcome news for many First Nations and environmental groups who say the farms spread diseases and sea lice to migrating wild salmon. But the Salmon Farmers Association says the decision is devastating and based on politics rather than science. The federal government has said it will phase out open net salmon farms in BC altogether by 2025. All right, we have to step aside for a moment here, but we have plenty more news coming up, including young musicians from a northern fly-in community are getting a chance to shine.
I always like the colors in the sunsets, sunrises, and northern lights. It's just like really pretty. And the last few parts was like about some people I missed, like passed on, and like some people I missed that moved.
Welcome back to APTN National News. Youth from 4 Western Arctic communities in the Northwest Territories are now part of a collection of over 160 musical productions. Freelancer Carly Jogner was in the fly-in community of Pollocktook to document the youth's process and experience.
We don't need drugs to feel happy. We got the land and the family. Even when they go, you're never alone. They're a part of your soul.
That's 12-year-old Susan Aliciette's verse and throat singing in the new song, Traditional Spirit. It's coming from the Western Arctic Inuvialuit community of Pollocktook. Recorded on the shores of the Arctic Ocean, it's the third of 4 songs being made of the Beaufort Delta, for the first time under the award-winning Quebec-based mobile production group Nuit-Jinan. With over 160 songs and 8 studio albums since 2014, a music and video producer have been traveling across Canada to different communities. Milan Andre Bornell begins first with the youth in lyric writing and bringing it all together into a chorus.
On the first day, we present music that has been prepared already, and they get to vote and pick the one that resonates with them the most. And then we brainstorm themes, like lyrical theme ideas, and we basically just guide them through the process of writing lyrics, which really is just honestly expressing what you think or feel.
Just about hunting, because it's my favorite thing to do and feeds the whole community. Last time I got like 50 for the community.
Sunsets and northern lights, the colors light up at night. This light's missing from my life. Something's not feeling right. I always like the colors in the sunsets, sunrises, and northern lights. It's just like really pretty. And the last few parts was like about some people I missed, like passed on, and like some people I missed that moved. It sounds great. My friends' voices, my family members. It's really fun to make.
What's been your favorite part so far?
Filming around the graveyard, my Auntie Leona. It just felt like I needed her to be in something with me.
When they go, you're never alone. They're a part of your soul.
And also the throat singing. I feel really good about it. Because the songs hit something hard and it makes me feel like the emotions in each of the songs.
As a team of 4, Nuejanon has hired emerging Indigenous artists who were previously part of other music video productions. For Barnell, the experiences go beyond music production.
It's become really apparent now that these projects are not about the music. It's this bonus, cool thing that you get to keep forever, but it's the relationships, it's the experience, it's the connection that really opens things up for a lot of these kids. I come from a past that was not introduced to colonial history, was not taught to me in school. And so it's been this so far 4 or 5 year eye-opening experience on what my role is in decolonization and reconciliation and how we can all play a role.
He says since 2020, he shares a gift as a reminder that they are all part of something much bigger.
So at the end of our time together in these mobile production studios, I always like to give this special gift to the youth that I make. I take guitar strings and create these rings, shapes out of them, and then I loop them through a thread or some type of necklace. And every student in our group gets one. And what's cool is that you can, if you pay attention in the video to them, you'll start to notice that the ones I've done feature these necklaces on the youth. And it's a really kind of interesting and beautiful connection piece between us all, sort of the symbol of our experience together that connects us and unifies us throughout all of these territories and lands. And it's something that, it's a token really to symbolize what we did together.
And now they're seeking funds for the community's youth to go to BC for the song's launch of their 9th studio album to be released in June.
In BC?
Yeah, you guys are all going to be...
That's legitimate cool.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be fun, like hearing other people's music and that.
Carly Schogner, APTN National News.
Politics! We are traditional spirit!
That's a great story there. We have to take one more pause here on our show. Photo of the day and weather are next. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Greg Scriber sent in today's photo. Greg tells us the afternoon along the Ottawa River was full of snow squalls until things cleared up and revealed this beautiful sunset. Thanks, Greg. Keep these photos coming. We invite all our viewers, if you have a photo to share, to send it by email to share@aptn.ca. All right, now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. We start on the East Coast, -11 in St. John's and -7 in Halifax, -23 in Cartwright and -32 in Coujawak, -10 in Quebec City and -9 in Montreal, +1 in Toronto and -10 in North Bay, -19 in Snow and Timmins and clear and -21 in Big Trout Lake, clear and -26 in Churchill and -19 in Norway House, -21 in Barons River and -23 in Winnipeg, -24 in Regina and -23 in Saskatoon, -21 in Meadow Lake and -24 in Buffalo Narrows. As we head west, -24 in Fort Chipewyan and -22 in Peace River, -22 in Edmonton and -26 in Snow in Calgary, +1 in Vancouver and 2 degrees in Campbell River. Clear and -4 in Prince Rupert and clear and -22 in Fort Nelson, -15 in Whitehorse and -8 in Rock River, -20 in Norman Wells and -20 in Fort Simpson, -22 in Colville Lake and snow and -13 in Inuvik, -32 in Cambridge Bay and -30 in Arviat, -33 in Clear and Clyde River and -28 in Iqaluit. A nasty winter storm that has already shut down much of the northern United States is barreling towards southern Ontario, threatening to make a really difficult travel day for millions of Canadians. Most of the country is blanketed in weather warnings. The northern half of the map is warning of extreme cold and bitter wind chills. But as we focus on southern Ontario, that's where things get a bit messier. For areas south of Lake Ontario, the story will be freezing rain, with Environment Canada warning of the potential for up to 20 millimeters of ice buildup. Areas to the north of that line will see heavy snow, with winter storm and snowfall warnings stretching from Huron County to Ottawa. In the U.S., schools and offices across the Northern Plains are closed today as the storm moves into the region. Some areas are expecting up to 60 centimeters of snow and bitterly cold winds. And it is awards season, and the nominations for Canada's best work in TV and film have just been announced. Our newscast, APTN National News, gets a nomination for Best National Newscast. APTN Investigates is nominated for Best News or Information Series. Kenneth Jackson and Colin Crozier's In Plain Sight documentary on the sex trade in Kenora, Ontario has been nominated in the Best News or Information Program, and APTN's Indigenous Day Live 2021, A Nation and Her Mother, is nominated for Best News or Information segment. And this week on In Focus, we spoke with MMIWG advocates following the Sisters in Spirit marches across the country. What's changed since the inquiry and what still needs to happen? Here's a sneak peek at this week's episode.
You can grieve in a million different ways, and you can be really, really angry and hurt at the world, or you can actually go out and do something. As condescending as that sounds, you can. Mm-hmm. You can do much greater things, like going out and doing these walks and bringing the awareness, because we're going missing every single day, and us getting together is a message that we're still here and we're not going anywhere and we're not backing down. Every march you see, they just get bigger and bigger, and the cries of our women get louder and louder.
There is change. The federal government now has at least advertised for the position of Deputy Commissioner for Corrections regarding Indigenous people. There is change. However, Indigenous women and girls and 2S people are still going missing and are still being murdered.
Discrimination is still alive and well. And it's horrible. I always thought that we were so lucky living in Canada, but when you still see the prejudices and the discrimination, there's still a lot of work to do.
Turning my frustration and anger, on the tragic loss of my sister and, my niece and my cousin as well, is to really amplify their voices, and to know that their voices have not been silenced.
Well, that is all we have for this Wednesday, February 22nd edition of APTN National News. As always, if you want more information on anything you've seen tonight, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. For all of us here, I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.